What areas must Florida State improve as the season progresses to reach the college football playoff?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I'm your host, Brian Smith. Please rate and review this podcast, share and like. I truly appreciate it. Today, we're going to talk about all the things Florida State needs to do to give themselves the best chance to reach the college football playoff. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs and sports kind of wind down during the summer. Make sure you're still checking in with FanDuel because it is hooking you up with a boost and a bonus each and every day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Today's show is about what can Florida State do to overcome some potential shortcomings. Obviously, we have a pretty good idea what Florida State's going to be like based on the spring game, the players they brought in, and the players that are returning. Also going to discuss a little bit about comparing Florida State to some other teams and their issues. Got a whole bunch of things listed down here. Some stats and whatnot will be brought up as well. But this is mostly going to be about the Noles. I just want to use other teams as comparison, and you make your own judgment. If you want to comment about it on YouTube or what have you and make a discussion point in regards to, hey, Florida State's doing this, that, or the other. We wish they would do something different. We hope that Florida State uses another player differently, whatever it may be, fire away. But here's my own personal take. First and foremost, Florida State has to find a way to win games when DJ Uiagalelei is not at his best. I've said it a million times. I think he should be the starter based on his experience, his arm strength, and just being in a lot of big games over the course of his college football career. Remember, he's played 4 years already, and he did play as a freshman. However, it's a scenario where this is not a guy that's been clutch per se in a lot of big games. He's inconsistent. At Oregon State, playing for Jonathan Smith, a play-action team with an elite running back and a really good offensive line, he was still inconsistent last year and didn't complete enough passes, in my opinion. So let's just say he doesn't improve one iota. If he does, then great. This is moot. But if he doesn't, how do you win games, especially from an offensive perspective, if DJ is a little off? These are the things that I think need to be most important. Number one, I'll just get it out of the way because everybody talks about this. This is what fans complain about most in football. It's play calling. You cannot force him to try to get into a rhythm. Sometimes guys just don't have it on a day for whatever reason. You know, even Michael Jordan had days where he couldn't shoot the basketball well. It happens. They have to suck their pride up and change midstream sometimes, these coaches at any sport, and adjust. They hate it with a passion. Too bad. Do it anyway. If a guy's just not throwing well, if there's something you thought would work is not, you got to put it in the trash can and move forward. Now, the good news is Norvell and his staff adjust probably as well as anyone. But Jordan Travis also ad-libbed a lot and made plays that you cannot teach. He only had a couple picks last year, even though he was a bit of a riverboat gambler throwing down the field. He did have Johnny Wilson. He did have Keon Coleman. He had Gene Bell. He had really good running backs to help him out. He'll have good backs again this year. But the receiver corps should not be considered on the same level. There's no way around that. As much as you want to scheme, you're not going to replace Johnny and Keon. You're not. They're going to have to scheme it up mid-game, out of the blue, in the dirt a few times this year. It's going to happen. Could be the Georgia Tech game. Could be a game they should win by 20. For whatever reason, DJ's hurt. DJ's playing bad. They're going to have to scheme it up. That never, ever changes. Every college football coach makes millions of dollars for these really, and I do mean really, awkward situations. My guy is just absolutely ice cold. He can't throw it in the ocean. We got to find a way to score. That's on them. They make the millions of dollars, not me, not you. That's on them. The only guys that I ever really complain about play calling from talking to coaches are the ones that are just dyed in the wool. I have to do it my way, guys. Those guys usually get fired pretty quick. Norvell is not that way. His staff has not been that way. But it is, again, a different kind of quarterback. Just something to think about, and it'll be random this year. He's going to have a game where he just doesn't have it. That's a game where Florida State's going to have to find a way to not just handing off, to throw the football when he's not that accurate. That is a horrible combination, but you're not going to just do 70 and 80-yard drives consistently, 7, 8, 9 plays in a row running the football in today's modern era. Too many teams blitz. run a lot of really risky defenses when they notice that your quarterback's struggling, because they'd have to take advantage when a guy's down. They're going to come after you. And Florida State is going to take everybody's best shot anyway after the great season they had in 2023. I get it. They have to be ready for any game for it to go sideways. I'm curious to see how DJ handles it, because like the Georgia Tech game aside, which is, it's a weird opening, by the way, playing overseas. They don't play a team early on in the season. I go, man, that defense is just going to be like a manhandle Florida State outside with the receivers or whatever. They don't have anybody on the schedule early that I just think can do that. Clemson's a team defensively. It's really well schemed, but that's not until October. You got the game against Miami. That's always a difficult game, but they're not dominant at corner. The Notre Dame game is not until November. That's the best corners they'll play. And they'll play a few teams. All those teams have defensive linemen, but they have a chance to kind of build up. Hopefully what I'm talking about really doesn't happen with DJ. Here's my other concern with them, and take it for what it's worth. If DJ's having a good game, you got to take advantage, right? Benson is going to be the best receiver based on what we saw in the spring, and for most, not all, intel. As I often mention this spring, Norvell did not give very much, and I'm being extremely kind. He's not a guy that wants to give out information. That's most coaches. And I got to the point I didn't really pay much attention to his press conferences, more than just listening to it or anything I heard. He doesn't want to give out any info. So we're guessing, which is exactly what coaches want. Well, that also means I don't trust anything I'm hearing about receivers other than you got to prove it to me on the field. So who are the guys? If teams doubled Malik, if he starts off good, and I think he will, I'm putting 2 guys on it if I'm a defense coordinator. Prove to me somebody else can beat me. I want to see it. If he's your number 1 guy, make somebody else beat me. And I'm quite confident that will be something that most teams try to do very early and often this season. Again, a lot of the teams they play earlier in the season, they don't have dominant corners. I mean, not good, dominant. So they got to play some junk coverages. They got to take a lot of chances. And sometimes they'll just play really soft and try to make you win by dropping 7, dropping 8 guys, and taking away your best receiver with a double or hedging in a certain direction. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you have to find somebody else. But if DJ's in a rhythm, whether it's Malik or somebody else, they have to be able to connect. They need a number 2. I've talked about this a couple months ago on Locked On Seminoles. My biggest concern isn't whether Benson's good. I think he will be. Dominant, we'll have to see, but he'll be a good player. If you don't have a number 2 week to week, I don't care if it's NFL, college, or high school, you become much easier to prepare for as the year goes on. The film gets out every week. Every week, that's another week, Miami or Clemson or anybody else they play can say, okay, this is what we can do. You know how coaches say, we just take it week to week? That is garbage. There are guys in the back office that ain't taking it week to week, okay? I don't care what the head coach says at any school. I'll call them all liars right now because they are. There are people in the back office that do that. Teams, especially for your arch rival, you don't think Florida State's paying attention to what Florida does or Miami? Come on, let's be real. But it works in reverse. You better have a number 2 developed by the end of September that is definitive, where teams cannot just key on Malik or the running game, whatever it is, you must be balanced. Florida State was incredibly difficult to take on last year. But if any of these receivers aren't catching the passes and DJ loses confidence in them, so if he sees them open and he still doesn't throw it, your offense will bog down. This is a big receiver unit. There's a ton of experience. You got Ja'Kai Douglas in the slot. He had 115 yards and a touchdown against Pitt last year when Keon and Johnny were hurt. He's good, but now they have to do it in prime time. The only other thing I will say with this, it's going to help, I mean, barring something really unforeseen, with the offensive line having a lot of the guys back, but healthy. Last year, it was ridiculous how many guys were banged up. Utterly ridiculous. Every week, it was like, can somebody stay healthy? More than 2 weeks in a row, there was something. I mean, they might play, but we'd hear stuff about somebody's banged up more, ankle, hand, whatever. Florida State's just due for some more luck. That's just the law of averages. That should help DJ, the running backs, tight ends, and receivers. They got a lot of experience, Darius Washington, et cetera, up front. There's no reason to think, especially with Mo back, they should be a team that's really, really good up front. That is so important with a new quarterback. Gives them confidence. So next, we're going to talk about some of the teams competing with Florida State for playoff spots and things that I think that, quite honestly, could give them some problems, that we might have a really, really topsy-turvy college football season. because there's going to be a lot of losses for teams that are traditionally very good. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. I love sports. I love them so much. I really don't want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and teams are not really getting to play because their seasons have come to an end, we have to find new ways to be creative. FanDuel lets you do that by having opportunities whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and come up with different bets that you want at any time that you are in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is also hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. There are several teams that I've started to study towards the end of summer here just to get a better projection. I'd written out a list earlier this spring, talked about it here on Locked On Seminoles. Here are my top teams. Here are where I think programs are overall in terms of long-term. A lot of different ways to break it down. So today, I kind of want to revisit, because you hear about guys getting injured or whatever. It's been a pretty quiet summer for the most part, except for Georgia, which you can check out on one of my shorts here recently. They have a couple more kids got arrested for really, really dumb things they did with automobiles, but we'll get back to that in a minute. But overall, it's been pretty quiet. So I didn't have to go into, shall we say, as much as what I do in a lot of other years, which is a good thing. But here's what I think of some of the other teams across college football that Florida State is either a rival with or a prime contender for the playoffs. So no specific order, but I used Wendy's top 10 to start. Now I'm going to add a few more as well. So again, this is just their order. Take it for what it's worth in their top 10. Georgia, they have ranked number 1. They got Carson Beck back. They have a lot of defensive guys. They've got some really talented football players. Smale Munden, by the way, one of their stud linebackers, is one of the kids that was arrested for racing a car. After all that's happened at Georgia, that's kind of sad. But we'll see what they do there. My biggest concerns for Georgia are twofold. Number one, they only have 1 or 2 guys that I would consider pretty good pass rushers. They're massive, and they don't make many mental errors, as you probably know. And 2, this is a football team that lost one of the greatest tight ends in college football history after last season. I mean, Brock Bowers was just dominant. No way you can just replace him. They also lost Ladd McConkey, pretty good player. So like Florida State, you're taking big plays away out of your offense. Now, I know Carson Beck might be the first quarterback off the board for the 2025 NFL draft. No debate. You still got to throw it to somebody. Who steps up? They have guys, but I'm talking about clutch moments. I don't care about stats. Who does he feel comfortable with? If you don't like the guy, it doesn't matter what the coach says. Even a tenth of a second hesitation, the ball can go the other way in major college football. We'll see how that goes. It's not like Georgia's not a great team. They are. But those are the things I'm curious about with them. Ohio State, I have one major flaw and another that could come up. We'll see. 1, Will Howard is the transfer that they brought in from Kansas State. Good football player. Good runner, big dude, 240 pounds. I don't think he's accurate enough for this specific scheme of offense. He's better suited to what he did at Kansas State. Ohio State ends up with him. They didn't make it work with some of the other guys they went after or whatever. I don't know, but I'm curious. From what I've heard, I know one of the receivers currently at Ohio State doesn't even think he's the best passer amongst the kids competing. That's a problem. That can cause some dissension if he starts off slow, even if they're winning, because Ohio State's early season schedule is not great, but that's a problem. He's not accurate enough. And 2, this is potential. Ryan Day's a good football coach, but he is whiny. If anything goes wrong, and people will complain, and Ohio State fans are insane, he has a very thin skin. He is under elite pressure. If they're struggling, even if they're winning games, Ohio State fans expect to win 50-0 every week. They're delusional. Can he handle that, and does it impact the team? He kind of let it get to him last year. Body language says a lot. You could tell, especially that Michigan game last year. He was not comfortable. Again, he's not a bad coach, but I don't think he's elite either. This could be a really weird season. If they have any injuries or any problems that give them some issues against lesser teams, that could be a problem for the Buckeyes. Texas, I just got one thing here. How in the world can you be Texas and your pass defense is not top 50 pretty much every year in every category. They were in the 100s in passing D last year. And they had one of their kids that was an elite player transfer out. I don't know what the reason was. That should never, ever, ever, ever happen at Texas. That is a coaching problem in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it's the way they practice. They don't hit enough. If they're not doing enough drills that specify pass defense instead of passing offense. Remember, Sark's a passing game guy. He's really good at it, but you got to be careful what you ask for because then you can harm your defense. Maybe that happened. I don't know, but that should never happen. Why am I to believe suddenly Texas is going to be much better in the back end when you lose not one, but your top two defensive tackles who Pro Football Focus literally ranked 1 and 2 in terms of efficiency last year? That gives me pause. They have a national title contender roster, but you got to develop it and get it to work together, which is so incredibly hard. And I don't know the answer to this, but why would they suddenly be better in pass D? That could bite them at some point. Oregon, this is also a simple one for me. Dan Lanning, prove to me you can make an in-game decision that makes me feel comfortable that you're a better coach than some of the elite coaches in college football. Good roster. They got a 6-year senior quarterback, great pickup. They've got Evan Stewart coming in from Texas that they bought through NIL. There's no reason to think they shouldn't be 10-2 minimum. And I know they got Ohio State at home. Excuse me. But there's still something about, like, they were almost a 10-point favorite against Washington and lost last year. Dan is taking a little heat. He's not quite to the level of some other guys. But I'm curious, if they struggle and if there's any question about in-game decision-making, it's kind of like with Ohio State, but not to that level. Their fan base is not as crazy. He could feel some heat, and that could impact the team. Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin and the Rebels went out and bought themselves a roster with NIL, period. Walter Nolan, number one player in terms of just 1 year defensive tackle they got from A&M. That is a dude. They've needed linemen like him for a long time, although everybody does. But this is a special player, and they got other guys too. They got Florida's best pass rusher. They brought in other guys at other spots. If not now, a win for Ole Miss. Win. Here's the key, though. In Kiffin's career against top 10 teams, he has one win. One. He was at Southern Cal. They went to Oregon, which is ironic because that's a tough place to play. I believe the final score was 35-21. But that's when he was at SC. That's been a minute. He is terrible in big games against teams that finish in the top 10. They got to win big games. They got Bama's coming to town, Georgia's coming to town. Game like that, if they could win, that would change the program. Prove it to me that you can do it. Michigan, I did it real short and sweet. They lost their entire defensive coaching staff. Entire. Now, their D-line's good. It's really good. But they lost their quarterback. They lost their best running back. All those new coaches and a new head coach that was basically thrown into the mix a little bit last year. He was good when he could. That's too much for me. I think they're overranked for one. But I also think there's just going to be a game somewhere along the line. They just fall off the cliff. In-game coaching stuff, new staff, it's just hard. I don't think Michigan will be in contention for the title. Bama, it's quarterback. They have a coach that will run his quarterback. He's done that in the past, but the guy that he has, although a freak, does not like to run. It's very odd, but he doesn't. Prove to me that Bama's quarterback situation will work together. Will it? I'm not banking on it. Much like Michigan, I think Alabama will be up and down. They might beat somebody 51-17 one week, then turn around and get beat 31-13 the next. They have too many question marks for me that relate to the quarterback, the play calling, and what they want to do based on their personnel. Again, prove me wrong. Notre Dame, it's 3 or 4 things that all nitpicky. Their schedule is not as difficult, although they start out with their first game on August 31st at College Station against the Aggies. It'll be hot. It'll be nasty. It's going to be a night game. But A&M has a new coach. It's 3rd year for Marcus Freeman. We'll see. Freeman has not been good in road games. He's been really bad. Really bad. Their only other really tough road games probably are Georgia Tech. And then their road game also against Southern Cal, which depends. I still need to see more from them, but they did go out and get a real defense coordinator. And then the other thing, they lost not 1, but 2 offensive tackles early to the draft. That's rough. We'll see what Notre Dame can do. Missouri, straight to the point here. They got Brady Cook back. They got Luther Burden. They got some really good players across the board. They lost a lot on defense, but excuse me. But are they ready for primetime as being the hunted instead of being the hunter? If not, they're in trouble. So those are the main teams. And then Clemson and Miami, I want to talk about them since they're Florida State's biggest rivals. Miami, it's just Mario Cristobal. It's pretty much like Dan Lanning. Can he make it if the game is 23-21 and it's a critical decision like going for 4 downs, play calls, whatever it is? He's the guy that's going to take the hatchet. It's part of being a head coach. He's got to prove he can win a big game when the game's on the line and it's not about talent. He can recruit like nobody's business. In-game decisions. You got to prove it, brother. After Georgia Tech game last year, which he will never let that let down by anybody. They shouldn't. He has to be on his P's and Q's this year. It's third year for them. They need to figure it out. For Clemson, it's just about K. Klubnik. He was awful in the red zone last year. Just terrible in clutch moments. The Miami game they were up 10 points in the fourth quarter. He just didn't play well down the stretch. Now, some of the other players didn't help, but that's a problem. That can't be at a place like Clemson. That doesn't make sense. And then finally, some of their receivers have to make more big plays and stay healthy. Clemson's had a barrage of injuries at the wide receiver position for quite a while, and it's almost to the point like it's just crazy, similar to Florida State's O-line situation this past year. To finish up today, we're going to discuss the EA Sports video game that's coming out. They have their video game rankings for their top 100 players. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Now, some of you people are probably video games in your life in some way, shape, or form. I used to be that guy a long time ago, and I'll probably buy the EA Sports video game. I want there to be a little bit of an update between now and the end of August. I'll probably do a few things with injuries, and some of the bugs will get worked out with the updates. I'm going to get the online version of it. But I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. They only have one player, surprisingly, ranked in their top 100 for Florida State. Now, a team that's in some of the top 10 polls, like Lindy says, the Noles number 10, one guy, that's pretty low. So I'm going to talk about that player. Then I'm going to talk about 4 different guys. They're going to do updates, allegedly, throughout the season on who's playing well and stuff like that. They're going to do updates, and I'm going to look at it from a perspective of where I think some of Florida State's guys will be and who could make it into a top 100 as well. So the player in question is Patrick Payton, the defensive end out of Miami Northwestern. Really good player, and he's a natural pass rusher. They got him at number 87. I had no problem with that ranking. That's a guy that's going to be on the verge of being an All-American candidate based on his production last year and his upside. He'll have more than 5 sacks. He might even have 10. He'll be the featured pass rusher. He's a year older, stronger, smarter. No reason to think Patrick won't have a really good year. No doubt about it. I think that's the case. But again, it's just one guy. If you're a Florida State fan just thinking about the roster or looking at the depth chart, don't you think there could be more than that? Well, here are a few guys that I think could make it. I've got 4 guys and why. I think if anybody wants to comment on this, fire away. But these are the kids that I think can, and I'm going to give a few stat projections on these guys. But again, this is just 4. There could have been more too, so take it for what it's worth. Number 1's Malik Benson. I get why he wasn't, because he didn't have a great year last year at Bama. He was in and out of the lineup, that kind of thing. But his speed is something you just can't teach. Norvell has a track record of finding guys and fixing them. He is the repairman. I don't know what it is about him and his staff. They figured it out with the portal, man. He needs to bottle it and sell it. This is my projection for Benson. Take it for what it's worth. I went back and forth on this. I really think Jalen Lucas is going to emerge. He's going to cut off on some of the stats for other guys. They're going to be extremely balanced, which might actually downgrade skill guys on offense for making this top 100. But I think Benson's going to go 50 catches, 800 yards, and 8 scores. And I'm sure Norvell and his staff would take that right now. That would be 16 yards a catch. But here's the bigger point. If he does that, it opens up the field for other guys, which is a part of value and how I look at it. You win games as a team. If you got a dominant player, Keon, whoever it is, they get doubled. Well, okay, you take him away. Now you're going to go one-on-one with Jalen Lucas, Tofili, there's an RPO play and somebody like the tight end is wide open. Whatever it is, sometimes these matchups with these other guys one-on-one is just not going to be realistic. FSU's athleticism on offense is really good. Their running backs in particular, I think, are going to kill it in the passing game, in addition to what they can do on the ground. So that's player 1. 2, and this is the one that would probably be the most important for Florida State, and that's Darius Washington. Here's a key stat from him last year. 11 games, 470 snaps. That's according to Pro Football Focus. Banged up a lot, played with some other guys, in and out. But if he is as good as he can be, and maybe it's somebody else, but whomever ends up being the left tackle, they got to take that spot by the horns. DJ is nowhere near the physical athlete as Jordan Travis. He's just not. He is not going to escape like Jordan Travis did. He is not going to go out and not only escape, but create play. If he elevates his game, and again, it's got to be starting with elevating just how he plays, but then healthy. If that happens, it changes Florida State's offense. Benson gets more time to get down the field. He's a deep ball guy. It takes time. That's going to help not only Uyunglele throw the ball down the field, but it'll give chances for the offense to really ding teams with big plays. Florida State should be one of the best big play offenses. Darius Washington has a chance to be one of those guys. Really gifted, senior player. This is his time to shine. This is my favorite pick just because I think he got robbed last year, and he's really talented, and that's Daryl Jackson, the guy that transferred from Miami. He lived in the Tallahassee area growing up, signed with Maryland, went to Miami, now he's at Florida State. NCAA made him sit out. I'm sure you've heard the story, but here's the deal. He deserves an opportunity, and he's 6'6", 300 some odd pounds, depending on what you believe. That is a monster in the middle. He has a chance to be a one-year starter at FSU and go to the league. Very physically gifted. I think that you can't rank him in the top 100. Obviously, he didn't play last year, but this is a guy that could emerge. Talents like this don't come along every day. Florida State needs to take advantage, and good for him that he's getting a chance to live out his dream playing for Florida State, and opportunity will knock if he plays well this season in this thing called the National Football League. Ezra Thomas is the last guy. This is not a shock. This is the easiest one. I just threw him in as an obvious. 6'2" corners do not grow on trees. They never have, they never will. He is really good. He only gave up 2 touchdowns last year on 272 coverage snaps. Obviously, that's really good. That's like 0.78% or something like that. His touchdown rate is not the most important thing to note. It's how many times that he played well, especially down the stretch, and teams are going to notice. He's going to make teams question what routes they want to run, what plays they want to run, what concepts, because he can be a dominant player. And remember, Fentrell Cypress is on the other side. He could end up in the top 100 too. I just picked 4 guys here. If you want to talk about duos, FSU's corner combinations probably about as good as it is in the country. But he also had 9 stops near the line of scrimmage. So he's a physical defender in the screen game, the run game, etc. That's a really important stat. Teams try to screen you to death now, especially schools like Florida State, because they have a pass rush, Patrick Payton, etc., and they've got corners that do well down the field. Screens are the way to kind of circumvent the situation. If your corners and safeties do not tackle well, you will suffer. I think Thomas is really good at that. Final stat on him, he allowed 48.8% on the throws his direction last year. That's pretty good. That's going to wrap it up for Locked On Seminoles. Please like and subscribe to this podcast, and make sure you rate and review, share it wherever you can, and comment. Thank you very much. Everybody have a good day.